All right, are you ready to take a look under the hood of your own mind? Because today we're going on a journey. We're going to dive deep into the brilliant work of Daniel Kahneman to understand the hidden machinery that's driving every single one of your thoughts and choices right now. This is a trip into your own brain.
So let's kick things off with a little puzzle. Take a look at the question on your screen. Now, I want you to go with the very first answer that pops into your head. Seriously, don't overthink it. Just, what's the number? You got it? Okay. So did you say 10 cents? If you did, you're in very good company. I mean, it just feels right, doesn't it? It's so intuitive, it's simple, and, well, it's also wrong. The right answer is actually 5 cents. Now, let's do the math real quick. If the ball is 5 cents and the bat is $1 more, that makes the bat $1.05. And what's $1.05 plus 5 cents? It's $1.10. And hey, if you got it wrong, seriously don't feel bad. More than half the students at places like Harvard, MIT, and Princeton get this wrong too. So what on earth just happened there? I mean, why is our brain, even a really smart one, so easily tricked by a question like that? Well, this little puzzle is the perfect way to show that our mind basically has two different operating modes, almost like two characters who are always talking to each other inside our heads. So let's meet these two characters. They're the stars of our mental show, and the psychologist Daniel Kahneman gave them some very simple names, System 1 and System 2. Okay, so here's the breakdown. System 1, that's your gut reaction. It's fast, automatic, intuitive. It works with almost zero effort. It's the part of you that knows 2 plus 2 equals 4, or finishes the phrase bread and. That's System 1, always on. Now System 2, that's the thoughtful one. It's our conscious, analytical self. It's slow, deliberate, and takes a ton of mental energy. Think about solving a problem like 17 times 24. Yeah, that's System 2 having to get out of bed and go to work. And here is the absolute key to everything. System 2 is supposed to be the one in charge, the one that can double-check what System 1 comes up with. But System 2 is lazy. It takes real effort to engage it, and our brains are wired to conserve energy. So, with the bat and ball problem, your System 1 just jumped up and shouted 10 cents, and your lazy System 2 just kind of shrugged and said, yeah, that sounds about right, without ever actually bothering to check the math. So, because System 2 is so lazy, System 1 is running the show most of the time. And to do that, it relies on these things called heuristics, which are basically just mental shortcuts. Think of them as quick rules of thumb that let us make snap judgments. And most of the time, they work great. But sometimes they lead us into making predictable, systematic mistakes. So our first shortcut is called the availability heuristic. And the rule here is really simple. If you can think of an example easily, you assume it must be common. This is exactly why so many people are more afraid of flying than driving. Plane crashes are dramatic, they get tons of media coverage, they're highly available in our memory. Car accidents happen all the time, but they're not nearly as memorable. So our sense of risk isn't based on statistics, it's based on how good the story is that we can remember. Next up, we've got the anchoring effect. This is fascinating. Our minds tend to grab on to the very first piece of information we get, the anchor, even if that number is totally random. And from that point on, our brain adjusts, but it never really strays too far from that initial anchor. This is a huge deal in things like negotiations or pricing. The first number that gets mentioned, whether it's for a salary or a car, literally frames the entire rest of the conversation. Okay, time for another classic. Take a second and read the description of Linda on the screen. Now, based on what you just read, which of these two options is more probable? Again, just go with your gut feeling. If you chose B, you are with the vast majority of people. I mean, the description just screams feminist, right? It fits our stereotype perfectly, so our System 1 creates this really plausible story. But it's a total breakdown of logic. This is what's called the representativeness heuristic. We judge probability based on how much something represents our stereotype. But just think about it for a second. Logically, the group of all bank tellers has to be bigger than the smaller subgroup of bank tellers who are also feminists. But System 1's love for a good, coherent story completely steamrolled System 2's grasp of basic logic. You see, all these shortcuts, these compelling stories that our System 1 cooks up for us, they create this incredibly powerful and kind of dangerous illusion. The illusion that we understand the world way more than we actually do. And this leads us to become wildly overconfident in our own judgments, and especially in the judgments of so-called experts.
So let's say you're trying to predict something complex, like which stocks will do well. Who should you trust? A human expert or a simple computer algorithm? Well, the data is just crystal clear. Experts get distracted. They're influenced by their biases and try to find clever, complex stories. A simple formula, on the other hand, is consistent. It applies the same simple rules every single time without getting fooled by a good narrative.
And the results are honestly shocking. In hundreds of studies comparing expert predictions to simple algorithms, the algorithm was significantly more accurate about 60% of the time. So what about the other 40%? It was basically a tie. The expert almost never beat the simple formula. And that's a really hard pill for us to swallow because it just goes against our deep-seated belief in the power of human expertise.
Now, this overconfidence is fueled by things like the halo effect. Our minds want simple, tidy stories. So if we hear about a CEO whose company is doing great, we have a positive first impression. We see everything they do in that light, we call them methodical or decisive. But if that same company starts to fail, we'll look at the exact same behaviors, and now we'll call them rigid or authoritarian. We actually get the cause and effect totally backwards. We think the company fails because the CEO is rigid, when really the CEO just looks rigid to us because the company is failing.
Okay, so we've met the two systems. We have seen their flaws. Now it's time for the final and honestly, the most mind-bending idea of all. It turns out you don't just have two systems in your head, you actually have two selves. There's the self that actually lives your life moment to moment, and then there's the self that just remembers it.
To understand this, just imagine this famous experiment. First, you have to put your hand in painfully cold water for a full 60 seconds. Then, you do a second trial. This time, you put your hand in the same cold water for 90 seconds. But for the final 30 seconds, the water warms up just a little bit. It's still unpleasant, just not as bad. Okay, now you're told you have to repeat one of the trials. Which one do you choose?
Now, logically, this is a no-brainer, right? You should choose the shorter trial. 60 seconds of pain is better than 90 seconds of pain. And yet, most people choose the longer 90-second trial. Why in the world would anyone choose to endure more total pain? Well, the reason is that the choice isn't made by your experiencing self, the one who felt all that pain. The choice is made by your remembering self. And your remembering self is a terrible bookkeeper. It's a storyteller. It builds its story of the past based on two simple rules. The peak-end rule, meaning it only really remembers the most intense moment and the very end of an experience, and duration neglect. It almost completely ignores how long the whole thing lasted. Because the longer trial had a slightly better ending, the remembering self tells a better story about it. And so it chooses to do that one again. This just reveals a fundamental and kind of unsettling truth about us. Our major life choices are guided by flawed memories. We don't choose between actual experiences. We choose between the memories of experiences. And that leaves us with a really profound question. When you make a big decision about your job, a vacation, a relationship, who are you really making it for? Are you making it for the person who has to live every single moment of that life? Or are you making it for the storyteller in your head, the one who just looks back and judges the story? It's something to think about.